In this video, we are going to look at the derivative of the cosine of x. So, the derivative of the cosine of x, we're looking at d cosine x dx. What could that be? Let's use the definition of a derivative function. So it's the limit as h goes to 0 of the cosine of x plus h minus the cosine of x, and this whole thing is over h. The trick is how to handle the cosine of x plus h, and you should remember from Algebra 2 trig, there were some formulas for finding the trig value of the sum of two angles. And if you remember back, look in your notes or look it up, you can find that the cosine of x plus h is actually the same as the cosine of x times the cosine of h minus the sine of x times the sine of h. So I'm going to rewrite what I started with, replacing the cosine of x plus h with this expression using this sum of angles formula. And when we do that, we get the limit as h goes to 0 of the cosine of x times the cosine of h minus the sine of x times the sine of h. And then we have this minus cosine of x right here, which I'll write down, the minus the cosine of x. Okay, and this is all over h. Well, I see here that we're subtracting some quantities. I'd like to move this cosine of x over to be near this term that has a cosine of x in it, so that I can factor out those cosine of x. Before I can move my terms around, I think it's easier to turn these into addition. So I'm going to change this into a plus the opposite, and change this subtraction sign into a plus the opposite. This lets me reorder those terms. So we have the limit as h goes to 0 of the cosine of x times the cosine of h plus a negative cosine of x, I've brought that term over to the left, plus a negative sine x times the sine of h. And this is all over h. Okay, what can we do here? Well, there's a cosine of x here, there's a cosine of x there. I'm going to pull that out. So this is now the limit as h goes to 0 of the cosine of x, and what we have on the inside then is a cosine of h minus 1, and this is all over h, plus over here we have a negative sine of x times the sine of h, and it is also over h. For those of you who have been paying attention to the previous videos, you might already see what's going to happen here. So as the h goes to 0, this term, cosine of h minus 1 over h, is going to go to 0. And over here, we have the sine of h over h, and as the limit as h goes to 0 of the sine of h over h, this part is going to go to 1. So we'll have the cosine of x, we'll end up with the cosine of x times 0 plus a negative sine of x times 1. So this will of course become 0 plus a negative sine of x times 1, which is the negative sine of x. So in fact, we have now found the derivative of a cosine function. What we end up with is d cosine x dx is equal to a negative sine of x.